All right, everybody. Welcome to Darkest Fears podcast. And today I got a good friend with me. His name is Mike Jarrels. And
What's up? What's up?
we are going to be discussing the director's cut of Midsommar. And we just watched this last Saturday, I believe it was.
One of the best days.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit different, and I really enjoyed it because it made a lot more sense than the regular cut. What were your thoughts initially?
I mean, the first time I saw the movie, I was pretty blown away. It just has this. He has this knack, I should say, so far at least, since I haven't seen View yet, of just like you're meandering through the film like the whole time, and you're just like, okay, oh, okay, oh, okay. And then like at the end you're just like, holy shit, that was awesome. Like it always peaks out like perfectly, and that's how I felt about Midsommar. I was supposed to see it in theaters, but something happened where I couldn't go, or somebody like went without me or something. I can't remember what happened, but like I didn't get to see it until I think it was like on Amazon or something. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go in blind and watch it. I didn't even tell anybody, and then I remember I immediately watched it like when my roommate home. I was like, sit down, let's watch this, and I just started it back over. So of course, my chance to grab at the director's cut, I did so immediately, just because I knew tales of his director's cuts being ridiculous. And I'm glad I did. I feel like both versions are good, no doubt about it. I don't feel like one definitely trumps the other. I feel like I wouldn't be bothered if I saw either or on TV, or anybody's TV for that matter. But I mean, if you can go the director's cut route, go for it for sure.
Oh my god, yeah, because that packaging is marvelous.
Yeah. Yeah, the packaging is something else. I remember just like busting that out when I got that in the mail and just being like, oh, sweet, a book. Oh,
oh
a
god.
This is not the book I wanted. But yeah, you can Google up pictures of that. I'm sure they're probably on the A24 website. It's just pretty much all the paintings from inside of the longhouse, sprinkled throughout the book, with all their ridiculous mutilation.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things about Ari is, especially with this movie wasn't even like really inspired by horror movies. This was, what I was reading about is this was inspired by 1973's Scenes from a Marriage, and also 1981's Modern Romance,
Yeah.
and also little splish splashes of The Shining in there.
Right.
But it's really interesting because he does not seem like the kind of guy that would make horror movies, but Jesus Christ, he also seems like he could have some really fucked up like thoughts in his head as well. Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only just like look forward to whatever is going to happen with that guy and whatever he does. I mean, even if he makes a few turds here and there, like they're going to be interesting turds to say the least.
Yeah, like when I just recently just watched this Strange Things About the Johnsons, that short film he did for the American Film Institute.
Yeah, I had that spoiled for me, and I think that was the first one I watched, which I kind of wish I would have went in your order, because it put me off from watching it for a long time. And then once you watch it, you realize like it's not gratuitous, it's not in your face. It's just like, no matter how he would have broached the topic, it's completely uncomfortable and awful. Like,
right, and that's one thing Ari's really good at, is being super subtle, but what's going on, and
right.
it's fucked up.
And it has that weird Midsummer palette where it's like very Americana, bright, outdoorsy pastel colors like going on, and you're just like, this isn't right.
Right.
This isn't right at all. Like,
yeah, and,
this is supposed to be like some rednecks in a tin shack doing this. Like,
yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. Like I've kind of noticed, like watching through his films, he has a thing about baby blues and pinks and like
Yeah.
really bright colors in his sets, and it just makes absolutely a stark contrast to what his movies are.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing, you know, like kind of like I was delving into is like the paintings in the films.
Mhm.
You know, I was just like kind of looking up, and I was talking to you about this painting in Christian's apartment that came from a series called Dino Assholes, and I
Is it
could
really
not.
called that series?
Yes, it's called Dino
I thought you
Assholes.
typoed it, and
Mm,
I was like,
mm,
haha, that's a funny or like I thought you named it that or something. That's even funnier.
no, it's by an artist called Mupan. Uh,
Okay.
and I was just like, is this for real? But I looked it up, and it is true. But
I do
it's
want to see a good shot of it because I was, like I said, the movie's on in the background, and it's very hard to see in the movie.
it is a little bit hard to see, but yeah, it's in the scene with Danny and Christian, and they're having like an argument back and forth. And you know, that's the kind of thing you notice in this movie. Like when people are having like arguments, he
It's
puts
framed.
things, yeah, he puts
Yeah.
things in the background that kind of like frame it, and that's really interesting too. But you know, there's a lot of different things that kind of allude to the story. And, you know, I mean, you know, the first thing that you see when the movie pops up is the mural that kind of tells you the entire story. But you know, of course, you don't pick up on that on the first watch because you have no idea what you're looking at.
Right, and then the way the camera pans is right to left, not left to right. So, you know, you can interpret it different ways depending on how you figure that when you see it.
Right. And also, the other one that I noticed was the artwork of the girl in the crown facing the large bear by this
Right.
when Danny's sleeping on the couch or whatever it is.
Yep.
That one is by the artist, he's a Swedish artist by John Bauer, is what it is. And that kind of alludes to the ending of the film, which, you know, if you haven't seen it, you know, you'll find out. But, you know,
Yeah, there's a lots of moments of bears, as well as it's not the longhouse, but it's the not the sex room, but the pre-sex room. The we're gonna talk to you about the
oh, yeah.
sex room.
Yeah. The
There's
copulation.
there's a bear in there as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's one other thing that kind of stuck out to me. Now, one thing I learned when I sat down and watched this with you last weekend was that I didn't notice is when the opening scene with when the parents, when you find out the parents are dead, and you see the picture of Danny with the flower ring around it. And I kind of didn't pick up on that the first like couple of times I watched it. I don't know how I missed it, but I
Right.
did. But
And I think that says a lot for him to. I mean, you know, I only have these two movies. You've seen View, but uh, it's just something about his movies. Like it says a lot in this day and age to make a movie that's not only rewatchable, but that you want to watch over and over again. And not because like it's comfortable like Indiana Jones and you know every moment and you want to see every moment again. Like I could watch Indiana Jones till the cows come home, and it's like my dad's Gunsmoke. My dad has been retired for 5 years. He just watches Gunsmoke every day, and I'm like, I know you've seen every episode 40 times. And he's like, well, Gunsmoke's on. I got to get home. But you know, with Ari, it's like there's still another rock to overturn almost up to your 20th, 30th viewing, probably. Like there's still something you can get gleam out of it. Um, and then, you know, once you think you have that puzzle set, like he's not as head twisty as Nolan and shit like that, but um he also keeps it open ended as to where he doesn't outright explain it either. You know, Nolan eventually will come down and give you like, you know, the basic tenets to be like, oh, I get where he was going at with this movie or that movie. With Aster, it's just like, did he put this painting here to represent something here, or did he find it funny, or did he just think it's cool? Like you just don't know with him.
right. And yeah, that kind of that scene alone, you know, opens up a lot of other different questions. Because you know, I was actually talking to somebody about this movie just a couple of days ago. You know, they thought, there was a murder suicide with the sister and the parents, but it also opens up other questions because that's also evidence of the cult being there, possibly, and
Oh,
possibly.
it's totally Pele, dude.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, and that really kind of like brought a revelation in my head, like, oh shit, like, yeah, Pele was there, and that's why he was
Even
so
if Pele
like.
wasn't there, I feel like maybe he got to Danny's sister and her being bipolar manipulated her or something like that.
Well, yeah, and it also just like it makes you like realize why he was so excited for her to go,
Right.
why he was so attached to her
Yep.
when they got there, and like I know how you're feeling in this moment, and blah blah blah. Like he was confessing to her, like what happened to his parents, and it's like, wow, this kind of opened up like a whole other can of worms. Like this entire thing was absolutely completely planned.
Yeah, and I did not get it my first time through for sure. I was just like, well, that was a crazy Ari Aster movie. Like, of course, I'm not going to, pick up on that, but like I said, it really depends on. Oh, they're at the scene with the cliff. But it just really depends on how big of a screen you see it on. Today is like probably my sixth viewing, and I just realized when Danny first does the tea, I've always noticed the stuff growing through her hand, but when she looked at the tree every time, I never noticed anything. And today I finally noticed like you can see energy surging through the tree, and I was like, what the hell? And then the whole scene with her in the outhouse, like, when we saw who we saw in the mirror, I didn't catch her. So if she is there still, it's very quick in the normal cut.
Yeah.
But when she bolts out into the woods, that's also like lightning quick.
Yep.
And then she wakes up. But as she's bolting into the woods, they're doing the whole trees are being wavy effect for just a second. And I was like, man, like that's so perfect because most people when they do hallucinogens in movies, they overdo it and it's fucking just silly. And like the way he just like slowly puts that in scenes is great. Because like Danny's already nervous. Danny's already taking like tea instead of eating them. She's trying not to trip too hard because of the trauma she's been through. And then so like when she's tripping, it's like barely. And then towards the end, when they're all tripping off God knows what weird vagina potion thing, like it's all really much more intense and pronounced.
Right.
And I really love that stuff and just the subtlety in that. I mean, that was really cool. And really just having that when it's appropriate. Like, he doesn't have that going on during tense moments when none of them had taken drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't just like insert it in for flavor. Like there's a prerequisite to it, which I think is really good.
Right. And there was also when we were watching it, the face in the woods. I was also reading into that a little bit too, where they were saying that was also her sister's face in the woods.
Yeah, because it's got the mask and the hose coming out.
Yeah, the mask and the hose kind of. Yeah, I was just like, whoa! I was like, man, I didn't even think that. I was like, because when you look at it, it's just like so amorphous, you can't like make it out like the first like few times you see it.
Right, and I mean, I don't want to sympathize with Christian because Christian could have handled everything better.
Oh, definitely.
But like all of his friends were saying, even shitty ass Will Pollier, it was like, you've wanted out of this relationship for a year. Like,
yeah, the guy played Mark.
You need to do it now. Yeah, you need to do it now. Which I feel he got snubbed because in the standard version, he just sounds like the biggest dick. In the director's cut, it's like he's actually funny, like because he has more lines and they're hilarious. And my thing is like, I'm not trying to sympathize with Christian. I think both Danny and Christian are messes and they shouldn't be together, and it's just a toxic deal. But like, Christian tried to step up when her family was fucking killed, suicided. Like he tried, even all his friends barking down his neck, like he tried, but he was a colossal fuck up.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't mean he's the worst person on earth. He wasn't going out banging hookers and like doing blow. Like he was trying to be there for her. Nobody else was gonna come over and fucking rub her back while she screamed to a bunch of violins all night. Like you know, and I feel he deserves credit for that. Yes, he gaslit her, but she gaslit him like the whole time.
The entire movie.
And she might not have known she was doing it. Like that's the thing, like with all these new like hot phrases about like, oh, he's toxic, he's gas like a lot of people never had these concepts explained to them and they were just passed down through their parents.
Right.
So they have no idea that they're doing it. They're just reacting how they were brought up to react to situations.
And I think that's like an ongoing theme with Ari's movies is that these feelings that he brings out of the actors, they are completely like unbeknownst to them. Like they go through all of this stuff and this entire story is like planned, but it's unknown to them and all their feelings are unknown to them. But it all happens like with a like you said, to a T. Everything comes to a head and it's all planned. Like even in Hereditary with the grandmother, even though she was deceased, she had all of this, like she had this grand scheme plan.
Yeah, and I don't know how he's so good at putting people in the back, like, of shots for 4 seconds and me never seeing them. Like that shot that you had of the grandmother in your last episode, I was like, I've seen that shot probably 5, 6 times. I've seen the grandmother maybe twice, but never like that pronounced, like that noticeable. Maybe it's because you were given a heads up in the episode as it was coming up, but I
Oh
was
my
just
God,
like,
dude. I remember the
what the
first
fuck?
time I watched that movie, that scene was always burned into my head.
Right, and it's crazy. Like you see this shit in theaters. Like I have 2 friends who saw Hereditary without me. Like we both planned to go, 2 different people, and they both were like, "Hey, I'm here," and I was like, "What are you talking about? You forgot to remind me today. Like you forgot to bring this up to me at all. You went at a time I'm working. Like what the fuck?" But you know, they both saw it in theaters, and they were both texting me like, "I don't really have any idea what just happened, but it was crazy." And it's like, you had the biggest fucking screen you can get besides IMAX and you did notice all the people standing in the corners of the woods. You didn't notice like all the people in the background, all the pieman symbols, like all throughout everything. Um, and to me, that's a great director. Like, because what am I going to do? I'm going to buy that movie on DVD or I'm going to watch it streaming and then I'm going to watch it again and again.
Right, because what makes him so great is that he can not only tell a story through dialogue, but he can also tell a story through images and
Right. I
through
saw a very good
shots.
point about Midsommar. That the cinematography and acting is so well done that you could watch it on mute and still understand fully what happened.
Exactly, and I think that that's what makes him so like great. And I think his praise, the praises that he got from Martin Scorsese are definitely 100% valid.
Yeah, it's weird too because Martin doesn't really open up about younger directors like that. So I don't know if like he's like, "Hey, if I slide you 200, will you ride it forward for me or what?" But like, that guy is normally not really too big into opening his mouth about Hollywood. I mean, the only other time I remember him doing it was slamming Marvel movies, which good for him. Because he did it right before they all started to get really shitty. I mean, they've always been pretty shitty, but they got really shitty. Yeah, but yeah, like I just I will say that Hereditary is still my favorite, but Midsommar is, I feel it's unique. I feel everybody that says like, oh, it's just Wicker Man, and it's like, it's just a pagan horror movie, and you need to like make space in your mind that there can be more than one of those.
You see,
Like,
what I don't get about that though is that the two stories between The Wicker Man and Midsummer are two completely different beasts.
but they didn't want to consider that. That's what I'm saying. They like, if you watched Midsummer and paid attention, you might say that and then have an addendum to it and be like, but they are different in these ways. But I didn't hear that from who I heard it from. It was just like, it's basically just the Wicker Man, and it's like,
You only
you
got that,
watch
because
you
they
watch
only
either of
got,
those.
they only got that from the imagery, and
Right.
that's
Like I
it.
haven't seen Wicker Man the original. I haven't seen it in about maybe 15 years, but like, it's about the Green Man and completely different than what this is. You know, this is also something that is, you know, Norse based, but also fake.
I mean,
The Green Man has a long history in mythology, a very long history.
it basically it has nothing to do with a relationship.
Yeah.
It has to do with a police officer from the mainland of Ireland has to find a missing girl, and the
Right.
missing girl is on this other island, and she's supposedly being held captive by these pagans.
Right. It's just as insensitive as saying all pagan rituals are the same.
Yeah.
Like anybody who isn't Christian, you know, they're doing all the same rituals no matter where they are in the world. Like they're doing blood eagles in South America. They're doing all that.
Right. And kind of getting back to with Ari kind of putting things in the background, you know, the one thing I also noticed is the bunkhouse, the pictures and the paintings all over the house. They also tell the entire story of the movie,
Right.
if you look close enough. And that's that's another thing that kind of adds like to his attention to detail.
Right. And I think, you know, a lot of his angle, as we know with the relationship thing, was like when two people are fighting and their relationship needs to end, but no one's ending it, etc. Like you look fucking crazy to everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
No matter what. Like you know you're sane, you know, like, you know, all of your words towards your lover have motives and you know, pretense, and you know what you're trying to get out, but like it's literally just a gaslighting battle half the time. Because it's not even a Danny Christian thing. It's just like most people can't fucking communicate. Most people can't sit down and be like, I was wrong. Let me fix this. You were wrong. Let's fix this. Like, you know,
It
most people
goes the
don't do
same
that.
thing with like having an argument even on Facebook.
Right.
Like,
It's like when Danny breaks down and she's like, "Oh, you were gonna go without me, blah blah blah," and then like he gets real pissy about it, and she's like, "No, I'm wrong. I'm being crazy." And it's like, "No, you're not, Danny. Like, back that shit up. You're not being crazy. Like he was gonna roll without you." Like,
yeah, I mean, like, especially like, say, like my wife, you know, my wife
right.
Jackie, if she were to go off to like some like foreign country, not even tell me about it without me knowing, I would be pretty
I mean,
livid.
I'd probably be like, "Go ahead and go," but that's me. I don't like foreign countries.
But it's like without even
Right,
telling
right,
me, and it's
right.
like, and it's with a bunch of other people that I don't even know. I'd be
Yeah.
like, well, what's going on?
I think it's the circumstance that drives it home. Like, I think if it was just like a fun summer frolic for their thesis, it would be whatever. But the fact that everybody in her family is now dead from a weird murder suicide based off carbon dioxide of all things, like
And
sister
and
could
I
have
would like to say it would just I think it was
her
mainly a murder.
her sister
Yeah.
could have did it any other way she wanted. But I mean, for all we know, Pele was brainwashing her just via messages. Like, you know, he
Right.
didn't have to be there in the flesh. Um, and there's no definite proof of him doing it, but it's just like it just stinks to high heaven.
Right. I
Like,
mean, just the seeing the picture of Danny with the flower ring around her in the parents' bedroom. And also the other thing I noticed while rewatching that scene again here at my house, I also noticed a really cool detail in that scene when Danny was on the answering machine and she was talking and trying to get a hold of the parents. The parents were still breathing.
mhm.
And I was like, so she would have kept calling, she may have been able to wake them up and save their lives, and like that even adds to even more guilt and like even more grief if she knew that.
Right.
Like,
Right, and the whole fucking like pizza parlor talk, which you don't get in the original, you only get in the director's cut. Because I just watched it, it like it's so short, and like yes, he cut it to the point, but the knife doesn't twist nearly as hard without them sitting there for like 10 minutes being like, she's a cunt, fuck her, like over and over.
mhm.
And then she calls and he's like, "Oh, she's fucking calling you again? Well, she needs a therapist. Well, then she should be calling her fucking therapist, blah, blah, blah." And it's like, "Oh, what is this phone call? I guess I'll answer it anyway." And then it's like, "Oh, wait, she's sobbing. What's going on? Oh, murder, suicide. That's yeah, my girlfriend's a bitch because of murder suicide. Like
Right.
um and that's the thing, like, yeah, Will is funnier in the director's cut, but he's also just like he couldn't be more further from the truth.
Mm.
Uh and the only, like, Pele you can't trust. And it seems like the only person there that really cared about anybody was the dude doing his thesis on the Harga, because, like, anytime Danny needed a sleeping pill, he had her. Anytime they wanted to know something, he had them, unless it was to fuck with Christian, who was stealing his thesis. Like, um, he seemed to be the only person there to care. But as we kind of learned on, they didn't have any reason for anybody non-white to remain living,
Hmm.
um, because the secret would have got out. They would have went and published papers. So I can't really say that it was just race based, but you know, he was going to go publish his thesis, everybody would have came to that town.
Right.
And like, they're trying to convince themselves that these are customs, that these are cool in their community, blah blah blah. But the only people that survive are white males for their seed and females for the
Hmm.
May Queen. And we also don't have an explanation as to what life the May Queen lives, which is another thing I hate when everybody's like, "Oh, Danny escaped a toxic relationship and that's why she smiled." Like, Danny's family was murdered. She was convinced to come there by the guy who lives there. Like, because everybody else was like, "We need to talk, Christian. I don't think you should invite her in the side room." And the whole time Pele's like, "Oh, you should come. It's dope. Check this out." So you have that. You have all the drugging going on, some consensual, some not, all suggestive mind control drugs that have history with MK Ultra and
Hmm.
suggestion and the power of suggestion. And then, like, again, that smile at the end that everybody signifies is like, "Ooh, a free woman." And it's just like, no,
No.
this is a woman tripping her nuts off seeing a pretty fire. Like,
Right.
I think that's all that is. And then we have no idea what they do to the main queen after. Does she get to rule the town and be like, "I'm the baddest bitch"? Or, like, do they chop her up and eat her 20 minutes later? Who knows?
Hmm.
Maybe it's in there and I missed it. Maybe there is some explanation. They did say the May Queens live for quite some time, but who knows if it's an awesome life? They may just use her as, like, a breeding tank.
Right.
So I don't, I can't really just take that happy ending ride, even if the happy ending was she got her boyfriend, her cheating boyfriend, who got coaxed into it with drugs, with a love potion, and a bunch of weird, creepy women ass pushing him into this girl. Like,
Right.
um, like, okay, he got forced into that or suggested into that very strongly under crazy powerful hallucinogens. They all got burned alive. I don't even know if she saw him being taken in. Now that I think about it, she may have, but she definitely didn't see all the other people being taken in,
Right. Yeah.
which you only really see in the director's cut.
Yes.
In
Uh,
fact, the trailer I watched the other day, the trailer fakes you out. If you watch the original trailer, the people shown burning in the um, barn are actually wearing hazmat suits, so you can't tell who they are from the actual shots of the cast.
yeah, which brings up a really interesting point, because in the temple, and this is another really cool and interesting attention to detail by Ari. In the temple, you see the runes on the wall, which are the X runes. And I was kind of reading into these different runes and what their meanings are. This one is listed as, and it's called the Gebo or the Gibo. Inside the tempo, that symbolizes the act of giving. And you kind of realize that, when the act of giving, that they're doing the sacrifices. And that's, it's like everything has a meaning in this movie.
Right.
The R rune on Danny's outfit, that symbolizes the what is it called, the ride or a journey. And next to that R rune on her dress is the hourglass rune, which is the Dagas. It symbolizes day or awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like so crazy how those simple details that can be missed by your eye, I mean, if you're not even paying attention to it, or if you don't know anything about the mythology, Right. It's like this tells a lot more about the story as well.
And I think that's why it was cut the way it was. As we said, like, you're in a new land, you're completely bewildered. The Hargas aren't subtitled. Like, you're just there for the ride and to see what the fuck happens. Like, and I think that's why a lot of the murders were cut out, because he wanted to focus on the dynamic of the relationship. And that's why I feel like, if you liked it or you watched it, you're like, I don't understand what happened, or I don't understand what the big deal is, and you can find the director's cut. I'm not going to say spend $50 on it like I did, but if you can find it, watch it, because A, you're going to get the blood and gore you wanted. You're going to get the resolution to each character you wanted, but you're also going to get extended takes that add a lot more nuance to the arguments they have, and not just the arguments, because I know a lot of people hate the relationship shit, but a lot of the just shots of stuff that the Harga are doing and explanations as to why they're doing it.
Right. And you also get the additional ritual with Maya.
Right.
As
You get the
well.
additional ritual with her. You get to find out what happens to everybody. You get to understand like history about their bookkeeping, as wacky as that is. Like, it's like he maybe felt he divulged too much and it was better to keep a lot of it a secret, which I feel works, because like as the standard edition's playing now, the Hargas aren't subtitled. And I forgot how effective that was after having them subtitled the last 3 times I watched it. How just being like, okay, this lady's screaming in, Swedish, and I don't know what she's saying. That would just terrify me alone. I would get in my car then and leave probably. Like, thanks for the shrooms. I'm gonna try to manage to drive out of here.
Right. Like, this is all so beautiful, but I really gotta go.
Yep, got my cell phone picture. I'll see you later. But yeah, and there's just different shots. Like, I think when they get out of the car before they take the mushrooms on the hillside, it's shot from a different angle. Because I remember watching it with you and I couldn't see Will on screen complaining about the bugs, but when you watch the standard version, he's in the shot complaining about the bugs.
Right.
There's another one, I can't remember where, but it's just like just a shot from a completely different angle. And it's like, I don't know if they shot it again or they shot both shots at the same time, but it's just cool because it's like a different movie, even if it's the same scene.
Yeah. And another thing about the runes, and I was reading this article about the runes, and there was one where this lady was trying to explain Christian's rune, which is the arrow pointing upwards. She's like, oh, it just means male. I was like, well, there's got to be more to it.
Right.
So I was reading about it, and the upwards is the Tiwas. And what it is, which is to believe the represent the upward movement towards a spirit, upward movement of the spirit towards enlightenment or higher consciousness. And the shape of the rune also suggests forward movement and progress, which was his whole purpose, I think, to help move the ritual along as well, because he was all a part of it, just as much as Danny was.
Right. I mean, a lot of people will look at the sex scene as like, oh, he's just fucked up and cheating on Danny, but
right, like, no,
he didn't know he was going to be fucked up.
Yeah, it was for a purpose.
He was led to believe that getting fucked up was going to be for a good fun time to dance, not be like sequestered into a room and held at boob point and forced to gangbang a chick, like. And it's just so telling. The second, like, he is done having sex with her, she rocks back to hold in all the semen, and it's just like, oh, that makes sense. And then you're like, oh, he's terrible for cheating on her, and it's like, there's more to this.
No,
like,
this was basically just like coerced rape for him, and it's not rape towards her. He was forced to do this. Like, this is not under his will, I don't think. Anyway,
and Danny walks that fine line because she, in the very beginning, she's like, I want to wait and find my feeding before I start to trip. And then she feels a little pressured and she's like, all right, I'm not going to be a bummer. I'm going to do it. And she wigs out. And they're not really too mad at her about wigging out. And then, you fast forward to maybe the next time that she takes anything is when she is cooking with the Harga. And they're like, dress like us. They're like cook like us. Drink some of this. Oh, well, what's this? And it's like, oh, it's fun. It'll loosen you up. And meanwhile, Christian's getting the same thing, and they're getting separated.
Right. Christian
And
gets the menstrual blood in his
right,
drink, but everybody else doesn't. He also gets the pubic hair in
right,
his pie and the rune placed under his bed.
right.
So it was all planned and it was all forced on him. And it's like everybody wants to be so quick to blame Christian for what happened and towards Danny and their relationship, but
We also don't know what happened beforehand.
Right. But there, and I was reading a forum early or yesterday, I think it was, somebody's, well, Danny, Danny definitely made out in the end. I was like, dude, all of her friends got slaughtered, and she watched her so-called boyfriend get burned alive, and her
She
parents
even realizes it.
and her parents got murdered along with her sister. I don't think she made out very good in this deal in this movie.
Yeah. And it's weird to think that people would draw that even without the subtext. Like, just to see her carrying around that heavy ass dress at the end before she smiles, like, she just seems so lost and fucking out of it, and like not of her own faculties. Like,
No. And I will say,
and she's scream crying before she smiles anyways.
I will say the frown though with the flowers on is kind of funny.
Yes. Oh yeah. There's lots of funny parts, but it's only in hindsight.
Yeah.
Like I don't even think there's any funny parts in Hereditary. Like I
could not find one funny part in that movie.
I rolled when Charlie got decapped just because it was so sudden. It's like if you've ever seen the movie Adaptation with Nick Cage, like the movie's so dry. At least they aged it when I saw it when it came out. It was so dry. It was so stale. And then there were just like random lines that were so vulgar that it would just break you into two. And that's how I felt with Hereditary. I was like, this is really spooky, but I can't get a grasp at what's going on. And then it was that slow notch up after she had the peanuts, just like, oh man, this is getting intense. Oh man, he's high too. I know what it's like to be high and have panic attacks. And it's like, oh no, he's driving really fast. She can't breathe. And then she starts to stick her head out the window. And I'm like, that's probably a great idea, because even if your airways are closing up, the force of air going into your mouth might help. And then clap. And then I was just like, and I just busted out laughing, and my nephew just like looked at the TV, and he's like 10 years younger than me, and he was just like, oh my God, what are you watching? And I was like, you got to watch it from the beginning. Don't even pay attention to what's happening right now. And I was just like laughing, and then like from then on the movie just gets so much worse.
Right.
Which is crazy, because I already felt so bad for Charlie. Like the whole time they're just like, you should have been a boy. Ha ha ha, you weirdo. Like,
right. And that's one of the things that just kind of carries out through that movie. So you should have been a boy. And like my mom even told me I was supposed to be a boy. I acted like a tomboy, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But
and without going too much into Hereditary, like I think that movie has a lot deeper subtext going on, that just falls together way harder. I mean, like, I feel like the Harga and the relationship are two separate things that take advantage of each other.
100%. Yeah.
But with Hereditary, it's this long planned thing, like since the children were born, since before the children were born, maybe. And like, it's why there's just such weird void of emotion in that movie too. Like, Tony is just constantly like, I'm working on my dollhouse. My whole life's falling apart, but I'm working on my dollhouse, because she just knows like this is supposed to fucking happen. And
yeah.
It's like when Charlie gets it, you see the moment that like you realize that Charlie was possessed by Paimon the whole time. And then right when she dies, you look at Alex's eyes and he's not there anymore, and you're like, that's the switch. Like, that's the exact switch. And with Midsommar, it's just like you have less scraps to work with.
Right.
Like,
and I think that's the real big difference between the two. With Midsommar, I think there was less of a backstory.
Right. But I
That
do love how his backstories aren't like, we're gonna take 40 minutes to explain this. Like,
right,
no, you're gonna pick it up through scenes if you're lucky
right.
in rewatches, shit like that.
Like this, like they basically like, oh well, this just happened to Danny, and this is going to push forward,
Right.
and like this whole entire thing that just happened to Danny is a sequence of events that is going to lead up to the end.
Right.
But there was like no like real like foreboding backstory to the whole thing. We don't really
Right.
know much about, you know, the sister's you know, mental illness and what she was really going through. We just know that she was, you know, kind of fucked up.
Yeah. And I really wanna, you know, get my friend Eileen to watch this because hopefully watch it with her because you know, even though it's not German, she has been to Europe quite a few times, and I want to see if she can glean any extra stuff from this with me, because she is very into her Slavic and Germanic roots, and I want to be like, okay, watch this. Tell me what you think about this. And yeah, I mean, she was familiar with the artist like already off the rip, who did the bear drawings and stuff. So he must be pretty well known. I know I have a few of his paintings saved on my phone that I use as wallpaper every now and then. But yeah, man. I mean, I just again like the fact that he uses gore and does it subtly, but when it's there, it just like
It hits you
pulverizes
in
you.
the face.
Yeah, like it's never like we're gonna glance at this body. We're gonna like stroll past this like dead person's hand sticking out of the ground. Like it's always just like boom. It's kind of like what I told you with Fulci the other day. Like the man knew how to make corpses. Like Fulci was
Right.
so good at making corpses. I was like, fuck. Every time I saw a corpse on TV, I was like, that looks so good. Like the corpse in the basement, um, after it's flooding and everything.
In the
Like
Beyond.
yes, like
Yeah.
when that corpse comes out of the water, I'm just like, oh, it looks so
It's
nasty
so
and real.
nasty and bloated.
Yeah,
And
and then I'm like,
gross.
but then it like starts to bleed, and I'm like, that looks terrible. Just because that man, it's like he didn't care what color the blood was. He's like, just make it blood. Sometimes it was orange, sometimes it was dark red, sometimes it was yellowish. Like, but I mean, like that dude was amazing at corpses for sure. Um, and I like that, you know, a lot of times Ari is always like, I'm gonna stick with practical effects, and there's always gonna be beheadings in my movies. So I'm really excited just that those are like, you know, a couple of the tenets he's given us. Like my movies are always gonna have decapitations at some point. Head trauma is as he paraphrased it. It's always gonna have head trauma, and he wants to stick to practical effects where possible. So I'm stoked on that. Because you know I don't believe a movie has to be all practical effects. I'm not like that anymore. I mean, I look back on the Thing prequel and I'm like, that sucks that this is practical effects, but they did as good as they could. Like some of that CG looks really fucking great.
Oh,
Um,
right.
uh, but you know the Thing is the grail of practical effects for me. Like it just looks so good. And then I feel like Midsummer's up there. Like even though Midsummer doesn't have crazy body horror, like just the small bits of murder we have are just so fucking gruesome.
Right. Well, like with the Blood Eagle scene.
Right, and
Um,
the Blood Eagle you just get a glance at in the original.
right. But in the director's cut, it's more prevalent, and you see the lungs moving, and it's just like, oh my god, dude.
Yep. Yep,
And
that and you know the head scene will always be classic. Um, the hammer to the head. I mean,
oh my
it
god,
doesn't
yeah.
get better.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember when I first saw that scene, I was just like, it was just like Hereditary, you know, just like things just took like a hard left turn.
yeah, but that one dragged out. That one was a slow ritual where you're just like, I don't know what's happening, but this is a horror movie and they're going up a cliff, so I think I know
I
what's
think I know
nope,
what's gonna
I did not understand that.
But a
But
really, really cool thing about that though is like kind of going back to the runes is when they, when you see the two people cut their hands
yep,
and they go up to the rune stone and they cover the rune stone with their blood. Both of those that they cover is the R rune, which is Danny's, and then also the arrow rune, which is Christian's.
yeah,
And that also is like kind of a foreshadowing as well as what's going to happen.
right.
So that kind of tells you like maybe what happened to Danny in the end. Maybe it doesn't have to be told to you or showed to you. Maybe she didn't survive.
Yeah, I mean, maybe she lived till she was whatever the age is. I think they were octogenarians, 80s or something like
72.
that. 72.
Yeah.
Maybe she lived till 72. She married Pele, and they both sacrificed themselves. But either way, it's not a fucking happy ending. She was coaxed there. She was fucking drugged there. Everybody she knew, she was murdered, and then you have this huge, warm, welcoming family be like, "Yo, we got pube potions and LSD. What do you want to do? We can take you to the airport, or
You ain't
um,
going nowhere.
right." So I mean, you can get in that truck, but it only seats one person. I just I think the only thing that I think he should have left in is Ruben. But then again, when you watch Ruben in the standard version and they fuck over Josh, it's just like, what just happened? Because you only see Ruben for a split second,
Yeah.
and then you just see him in the dead skin mask, and you're just like, what is going on? And they never explain it ever. So I get why that works, but I do wish they would have kept in the secondary ritual,
Yeah.
because that was like, yeah, we're kind of screwed up and barbaric, but we're not going to sacrifice this girl because that's how the story goes, and we're just paying tribute to our ancestors. And then everybody's back on board. They're not like, well, Danny isn't, but Christian's like, come on, it's not that bad. They didn't actually do it. And she's like, but they almost did. That's the problem. I'm getting
Right.
out of here. He's like, they didn't. They're just different people. We have to try to understand and respect this. And she's like, no, I'm done. Like, that's the whole time. She's like, no, I'm done. No, I'm done. And then when it ends, everybody's like, she finally got away from that dude. And it's like, she didn't want to get away from the dude. She wanted to get away from the town.
Right. She wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, by the end, she's not going to be able to go home.
Yeah.
she's kind of fucked, and that's what I don't get. Like everybody's like, oh, this is such a happy ending for Danny, and it's like, no, no, this is not a happy ending.
Like, how many people like smile in the face of trauma, smile nonstop on drugs, like just smile when their mind collapses entirely. Like it's just a silly take to have. Um, it's kind of like when I read the whole article about how Dark Souls is about the failure of capitalism, and I was like, this is a real article. Like, I read it all. And I just remember reaching into the ether like, I need these brain cells back, and I never do that. Normally, I'm like, let everything make me dumb, but I'm like, dude, it was the worst thing I ever read, and that's how I feel when I get that take. Like, I can see solace in like, yeah, Christian can't gaslight her anymore. Now she has a whole community to gaslight her, like, because that's all they did. Here's flowers and a pretty dress. Don't you feel beautiful? It's like, we don't have any plans for you. Eat this whole herring. Like, it's just silliness. And with him, I never know. It's like, that's why I want to watch these movies with Ari, because I want to be like, is this part funny? Should I be laughing at this part? What about this part?
Like, dude, what did you find funny?
Does he cackle like a madman through the whole thing? I don't know.
And
But,
I bet he does, because he just has a fucking twisted sense of humor.
right. And a lot of it, he knows that we will take seriously and at face value. He has to know that.
Right.
So he has to be like, oh, I can't wait for them to see this part, and then just laughing to himself, like, haha, I'm an evil madman. But like, no, you're just weird, and I want an explanation.
Yeah. No, I just like watching Bo is Afraid, and I won't go much into it. It's more prevalent, his comedy, in the
Right.
movie, and
I think
you
Joaquin would really open that up for him. I kind of figured it was going to be more on the nose.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. It's more prevalent, and I know you have reservations about Nathan Lane a little bit, but
I don't
man,
have reservations about him. I just know he's done musicals, so I was like, he's a fine actor. I have no problem with him. But
it's just
I was
so good.
watching I
And
watched
and
Payne and
he's
Wendy the other day, and there were 2 musical numbers, and I was like, God damn it. And they were 30 seconds long, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll keep watching this.
no, but yeah, Nathan Lane is outstanding in the movie.
Yeah. No, I've always liked him as an actor. I just know he did the producers and all that and Mouse Hunt, and I was like, I swear to God, if Ari snuck a musical number in here, I'm gonna go off. But no. I think given the circumstances, subject matter, and who's directing, I would probably let it slide. Not a whole movie though. I couldn't do a whole movie.
Oh God, no.
What did I watch? I'm thinking of Ending Things when that came out. Which, if you want a movie that like feels like you got dosed a small amount of acid, that whole movie. It feels like you're sitting on a pincushion the whole movie. It's not a horror movie. It's just like a movie that like every other scene, something weird happens and they don't explain why. And then the plot just keeps moving. And you're like, did I just see that? Did I just hear that? Did that just really happen? By the end of the movie, they do a full-blown number from Oklahoma. Like on
Oh
the
my
stage,
God.
on the stage and everything. And I was just like this the whole time. I was like, God damn it. And my roommate who loved musicals is just like, this is awesome. And I'm like, you're so gay. She always tried to get me to watch Fiddler on the Roof, and I was like, it's not happening.
Oh God, no.
I was like, here's how much I hate musicals. I'm not watching Spam-A-Lot. I'm not. It's not happening.
No, I think with Beau is Afraid though, everybody was really confused and really like they had no idea what happened. Me personally, I followed the movie really, really well. There's an obvious prevalent story, and I think there's not a lot to be missed in it. So I think you'll catch, if you are an Ari Aster fan, you will catch what's going on.
Right.
So
that's why I wanted to wait for a clear version to get leaked, because I was like, it was like 640 by something, and I was like, man, this is so grainy. Like I just saw him grabbing shit out of his bathroom cabinet, and I couldn't even read the labels of what he was grabbing, and I was like, yeah, I'll wait. Because knowing Ari, it's like, knowing Ari, it's like antidepressants that I need to know about or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely excited to check that out. I love Joaquin a lot. And I have just faith in whatever that dude's in. Like everybody's ripping that Napoleon movie he's doing with Ridley Scott to pieces, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, man, that movie looks great.
I haven't even seen anything on it, but you're gonna let Joaquin play Napoleon Bonaparte? Like it's gonna be hilarious at the least.
I mean, just like even just reading about it, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Ridley Scott.
Yeah, even when that dude makes turds, I'm like, he made an okay turd.
I mean, I watched because he did what was it? He did the fashion people. I can't remember their goddamn name
House
now.
of Gucci.
Yeah, House of Gucci. That movie fucking ruled.
I can't with Lady Gaga.
It was good.
I know. I just wish a rocket launcher would come out of nowhere and just blow it to bits. She's just so annoying, dude. Especially when they cast her like, we need a Jersey bad bitch, and it's like, get Gaga. And it's like, no, don't enable her, please. If you put her as like, oh, we need somebody from Nebraska who's a drug addict, like I might watch that. But when you're like, let's make her what she is, cool, yeah, let's do that. That'll go well, and it won't be annoying. Like making her Harley Quinn bums me out so much.
Oh, dude, I'm so sad about that.
Well, I know that like musical aside, she would kill the role, like because she basically is Harley Quinn. She's fucking crazy. She's from that area. Like, let her go.
I don't understand why they made it into a musical though, because the first movie Joker alone was fantastic. as it
It's Todd
is. And I
Phillips, dude. He made The Hangover. Like he made The Hangover, and then he made The Joker, and you're like, oh man, that was like serious and gritty. He's not gonna do that twice. He's gonna fucking. It'll be serious and gritty, but it's gonna have musical numbers for some fucking reason. I don't know. If reviews come back that it's stellar and she gets stabbed in the opening credits, I'll watch it. But it just sucks because I know she'll kill Harley Quinn. She'll do a great fucking job, but I don't want her to be Harley Quinn.
and I know like Joaquin will do a great job in the movie too, but I just don't know why you needed to make it a musical.
It might be the fact that he didn't want to make a sequel, maybe, and they were like, please, and he was like, I want $3 trillion and it's gonna be a musical. And they were like, whatever you say, and he's like, oh shit.
He's like, yeah, I'm just gonna. It's kind of like a producer's moment. Like, I'm just gonna make this huge shit flop, and hope it makes a lot of money.
It's like, what's the movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman? Cinedoce, New York.
Oh yeah,
dude. Speaking of like movies I can't watch anymore, just because they make me cry like a baby. That and Hook. Like I watched Pan and Wendy, and I was like, that was pretty fucking good, but it leads into Hook. It sucks.
I haven't watched it yet. I need to.
So at the end, like what always happens to Peter Pan, Pan's like that. Wendy's like, you can stay, because the mom wants to adopt all the Lost Boys.
Right.
Because she just like opens up the door and all the Lost Boys are in their kid's room just playing around, and she's like, what the hell? And then they find Pan on the roof, and he's like, I used to live here. Like this is where my mom used to live, but my mom didn't care about me, so I left. And I vowed never to grow up. And she's like, you can stay. And he thinks about it and he leaves. And then I'm like, fuck, dude. This just makes me want to watch Hook, because in Hook, he stays, he becomes an old man, then he goes back. And then I was like, I'm going to watch Hook. And then like, I literally saw the opening credits and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I haven't watched Hook since Robin Williams died. And I was like, I can't do it, dude. Like,
I love that movie so much.
Hook was my favorite Robin Williams movie and my favorite Peter Pan movie. And I'm like, if I watch this, I'm going to be in shambles. Like, just broken to pieces. It'd be like watching Bicentennial Man. Just like, why am I not a human? Like,
oh my god, yeah. Me and my dad used to love watching Bicentennial Man.
Yep. Me and my dad saw that shit in theaters.
I love that movie.
And it's the same with like Hoffman roles, dude. Like, especially Cinedoce, because that's like an opus of his. I could probably watch The Master, because he's not really charismatic in The Master. I mean, he's a cult leader, but he's not like full force.
Like even his small roles though are like so.
That's what I'm saying. So
like with Boogie Nights.
Dude, Boogie Nights is one of my all-time favorite movies. I can quote that from front to back. I think it started because my dad. There were two movies he would never let me rent: Boogie Nights and 8 Mile. I would get like summer club like Blockbuster shit where I could like rent any 3 movies and swap them out all day long.
Yeah.
And pay like they would pay like $30 a month, so I could come back after watching my 3 movies and be like, give me 3 more, and swap them all day, all summer long. So I would always go in there, and my dad would be like, you're not getting 8 Mile, you're not getting Boogie Nights. And one time I handed him a stack and Boogie Nights was in it, and he just like put it aside and then got me the other 4, and I was like. And I knew nothing about Boogie Nights. I was like, why won't he let me watch this movie? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I'd seen way more messed up movies.
Because he has giant junk.
Probably, in all honesty, it was probably the ending, which I've never watched that ending. I've made it right to where he pulls it out, and then I'm like, all right, I'm good. Click, because I already know what happens. But I also know it's a giant fake horse penis.
Right.
Like, it would have been funny if it was Wahlberg's just like little tenis, just like I'm a star. Like, ugh, dude, put that away. But no, it was always that and 8 Mile, and 8 Mile just makes me laugh because I'm like, this means at some point my dad tried to watch 8 Mile, and it had to be the funniest moment of my life that I missed. Just like the song starts, and he's just like, fuck this, and just turns it off. He's just like, click, turn it on the fucking game, even though the Reds are losing. I don't care. But yeah, those were the only 2. And then, once I started smoking weed, I think Sean's mom had Boogie Nights because it's all about the 70s where she grew up. So, I mean, we just fucking watched Boogie Nights. But like, dude, the moment of him just like slapping his face and saying he's an idiot
Oh,
kills me every fucking
that
time.
I mean, it's just it's such a small scene, and
I'm
people
like, hey, this is me every moment of my life.
like it's such a small scene, but like it's so powerful.
Right, and
Because
how
how
much he is
embarrassed he is.
removed from the movie after that.
Right.
Like you always see him off to the side after that.
Right.
You always see him like very nervous, like I'm gonna fuck this up too after that. Like they're all fucking doing the carpet dope afterwards, and he's just like freaked out and nervous. Like later when he freaks out and he's like, I know karate, Jack. I'll kick your fucking ass. You wanna go? Like you just see him in the background, like, oh, I'm gonna fuck this up too. Like it just destroys his character entirely.
Because it's a sign of the times. Like back in the
Yeah.
70s, it was very embarrassing.
Right, but it was also finally coming to fruition, so he was like, "I'm gonna roll the dice because I'm cool like Dirk Diggler," and then they were like, "No, you're not, dude.
No, you're
Sorry."
not.
And now you have a huge car payment as well,
Yeah.
so I don't know what to tell you. Like him and William H. Macy in those
Oh
movies
my God.
are like,
William H. Macy in
ugh,
that movie is so good.
dude. Especially when he rolls the like, my wife's in the back with an ass in her cock line. When he rolls it the wrong way and they keep it in the movie, I'm like, yes. And that's why I love Anderson too. It's like the dude does There Will Be Blood, but also does Boogie Nights. He does Phantom Thread, but will also do Licorice Pizza. Like that dude is another director that I think he's just stellar all the way through.
Oh man.
Uh, he's just fucking great.
I know we've gotten off on a tangent, but man, that's such a good movie.
We have to. It's Boogie Nights. But yeah, I mean, it's funny too because I've been trying to get my mom. Like I'll leave Hereditary at the house, or I'll leave Midsommar at the house. And first of all, they are already firmly on that kick of like, you mean I got to get up and put a disc in? No,
Oh no.
no. Like I gave my dad Band of Brothers and the Pacific, and I just took it back. I gave it to him like 2 years ago, and they just sat next to his Blu-ray player. I'm like, here, Dad, let me put disc 1 in for you one day, and I put it in, and I was like, now all you got to do is hit input 1, play, and he's like, yeah, I know. Never fucking watched it. I went over there when they were out of town. I grabbed that shit and a couple of my movies. I went home, but yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get my mom or somebody just to watch Midsummer or Hereditary. I know my mom would lose it over Hereditary, not like in a bad way either. I think she would stick all the way through and be like, "That movie fucked me up." My mom likes horror movies, but as long as there's not rats, bugs, because she has that weird thing where if she sees bugs, she feels like they're all crawling all over her and she gets chills. She's the same way with mice, same way with rats, but I think I could get her into Midsummer too.
Yeah.
She might pull the plug on the cliff scene.
My
But
yeah, my brother, he loves horror movies too, and surprisingly enough, even though he's a Christian, but he was talking to me. We just had like a visit not too long ago. Like I was telling you, we were just talking about this movie, and he was like, "Yeah, I could make it up until the cliff scene," and after that, I was like, "Yeah, I can't take anymore."
I can't bail out of movies, man. Like
And I'm not that way either.
right.
I,
It's not even a desensitization thing because I've noticed as I got older there are certain things that get under my skin. Um, I'm not a big fan of tooth shit like you. But most of it I'll write out. Or just look away, but like needles too. Needles get to me now and they didn't used to ever. I used to watch like Saw with her like rolling around that pit of needles and
mm-hmm.
shit. Or I used to watch like real close up like intervention episodes where they shoot people banging
Oh
drugs and I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, you're an idiot. That's cool. And then like now when I see it, I'm just like, ugh. And
yeah.
I still push through it, but like I'm not the person to be like, fuck this and turn shit off. Like I just don't do that unless it's exceptionally boring and awful. I even went through Horror in the High Desert 1 and 2 without turning them off, and god damn it, I should have. I don't say that a lot, but the only thing that hooked me in Horror in the High Desert 2, I was like halfway through, and it was because I was on my phone looking for something on Goku. I was like going through my movie list because I was wanting to watch like some epic movie that was gonna like really blow my mind, and I was like, well, I'll just let the second one play because it auto played. It's like I'll just skim through. and it took me almost the length of the movie to find something on Goku that I really wanted to watch. That's why I was like, I'll finish it, because I got to the part where they were like roaming around underneath some trailer, I think.
Yeah.
But they were playing Rudyard Kipling's, or however you pronounce his name, Kipling. It's called like Boots on the Ground or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know
Dude,
what you're talking about.
it's like the perfect power electronic sample I've ever heard in my life. And the version on YouTube I found is 9 hours long. So it's the poem like for infinity. And I just like I was like listening to it in my bed, like, haha, that's funny. And then I like slowed it down to half speed and I was like, ooh, nice. And then I just listened to that while the end of the movie played, and I was like, why didn't they do that? Like that took 2 seconds. What the fuck? Like, and all the end of the movie was is like him fumbling around the dark, and you just see like somebody staring at him in the dark, and you're like, oh, this is where he's gonna die, and the camera's gonna freeze, but he doesn't get killed. The person just disappears, and then the movie ends, and the guy's like, I don't know, I just ran out of the barn. I felt like somebody was there with me, and then the movie
Right.
ended, and I was like, can I please have those 4 hours back? Please give me those 4 hours back. I will go watch a 5-hour like documentary on the Holocaust and cherish those hours over this shit. It was awful.
Oh man, yeah. Like I just watched this movie the other day called the Andy Baker Tape. It's terrible. It was terrible. I don't even know. It was on Screambox for one, and I thought, okay,
Yeah,
I'll just
when you
give
gave
it
me
a.
your Screenbox login, I was like, I don't know.
I was
I
like,
was like perusing. I was like,
I'll check it out, because I'm like, I'm starting this podcast, and I just want to give everything a go.
oh yeah, we can do bad ones too.
Yeah, and I picked it up, and I hit play, and I was like, after an hour in, I was like, well, nothing has happened.
Yeah.
I was like, not a goddamn thing has happened in this movie.
And that's why I really want some found footage to hit, because I mean, we know the deal with Horror in the High Desert. It's funded by Bloody Disgusting. It's funded by Dread Central and shit.
Right.
So, they're obviously trying to get people to watch the movie they made. It just sucks because they didn't think about that before they made the movie. They do the thing like they think they can Blair Witch it, and that doesn't work anymore. You can't like backstory and then like aimless wandering and then boo and then credits. Like it doesn't fucking work anymore, dude. People don't have that time frame. Like we marathon shows, seasons of shows in one night.
Right.
Like that's the type of humans we are now. So, it doesn't really pay off when you do shit like that.
Yeah.
Even if I saw that in theater, like they do the documentary, there's a documentary approach, and you're like, I know this isn't real.
Right.
We have smartphones now, like where you just type in the person's name, and you're like based off a fake documentary, and you're like, oh, the story of what that is based off of is actually way sicker than what actually happened.
Yeah, I think the last one that got me like that was the Poughkeepsie tapes. And, I was just like, oh, well, this looks like kind of like a real documentary. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, this is a mockumentary.
Dude, I remember seeing the Poughkeepsie tapes like poster when I saw the movie The Bone Collector in theaters. Like that's how long ago I remember seeing the poster. So that movie had such like a shitty release development cycle that I forgot about it. So once I saw it like streaming, I was like, "Oh, I can finally watch it. Oh my god." That movie scared the fuck out of me, but the documentary shit did not. The part with the actual serial killer fucking
those
weirded
scenes
me
are
out.
riveting.
Right. And the true story on the Poughkeepsie killer is fucking crazy too.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're not similar. But that was just one of those fucking movies that I was like always excited for. It got away, and then I saw it come out and I was like, wow, that's amazing. What did I watch recently? The Banishing.
I watched that too. Yeah.
Not bad.
It wasn't bad at all.
Not great, but not bad. Like probably like,
it was very run of the mill for me.
10 10 points higher than Horror in the High Desert. Like, it's like they had to try to make that movie bad. I don't understand it, man. You spent so much time on the documentary angle, the the setup, the sad sister, the friends who thought he would be okay, the fact that he was like half autistic and loved model trains, like all these character traits and quirks, and then you fumble the horror. Like, why? Like, it started great because they're out in the woods. You hear these crazy sirens, music shit, and you're like, if I'm in the middle of a forest and I hear music, I'm done. I'm like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Let's go.
Right.
Fucking great. And then you have these people like walking around, kind of staring at him with torches, and I'm like, all right, shit's gonna pop off. And then as soon as it starts to pop off, it ends, and it's like, okay, cool. And then they're like, yeah, nobody ever found the body or the shed, and it's like,
Or the trailer.
but you have the fucking tape. Did they mail it to you?
No,
What happened?
it was found in the ground.
Yeah. So I don't understand like why you're gonna spend so much money. Not even like even taking the time writing articles. Like, please watch our movie. It sucks real bad. Like,
And that's one of the things about found footage, though, is that's like so horrible, is that you're already starting off with a huge plot hole.
yeah,
This is footage that was put together by 3 memory cards, or this was footage that was found in somebody's house, or this was footage that was found.
I mean,
randomly.
VHS is spotty, but pretty good overall.
Yeah, I mean, VHS is like, well, somebody goes into somebody else's house and there's a collection there. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of plausible.
Yeah. Yeah, normally it's not nothing you'd want to watch. It's something
Right.
you call Joe Walsh about. But
Right.
like, that's why I've been like on such a true crime documentary kick probably for the past couple years, because I can't find found footage worth of shit. Like, I have to find real shit. I went and watched again Record 1 and 2. Like, when you can get up to those levels or the Taking of Deborah Logan levels,
Yeah.
call me, because I don't care otherwise. Like, Record 1 was like already so good, and then when I saw Record 2 and they're like, well, we're gonna continue right where we left off, only it's gonna be through police officers' helmet cams. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna crawl through the vents and shit too. Like, this is perfect. It's another type of camera. It's another reason for you to go back in there. It's not like, oh, she survived her assault and she's using her camera again. That's
Right.
like, with no night vision this time, or it's got a cracked lens that you have to watch the whole fucking movie through. Like, it's like found footage is such a simple concept, and it's so easy for them to fuck up and still release it. Like, that's what I don't get.
And a lot of people fuck it up real bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you find good ones though, but you have to go through a lot of shitty ones. And that's and I love the genre, and I don't know why, but I do. But I love it. And when you do find a good one, it's awesome. What was there's an Australian movie that's actually called Found Footage, that follows a serial killer that's super good. I don't know if it's on Prime anymore, but I think it is on Screenbox now. But if you get a chance to watch it, it's really good, and it's super like fucked up.
Yeah. I'll check it out for sure. I mean, it doesn't even have to be fucked up. Like, that's the thing about found footage, is like the perspective, the sound, the angles alone. Like, as long as you can control the shakiness, obviously let there be shakiness when you're running and shit, but don't make the whole movie shaky like 97's Blair Witch, 99, whatever. Like, we don't need that again. But like, have it be shaky when there's action, but be steady when there's not, and like everything else carries itself. You just have to script the horror. And they did it in 99 with just shaking bushes and shit and screaming. So I mean, you can do it. Like, I have faith, but like, I don't know, man. It's just a bummer that like, I went real hard into I feel like I went real hard into a genre of movies that was like puddle deep.
Right.
It was like, oh, let's wade off the top surface and see. Oh, we're at the bottom there. Okay. And that's again why I like Ari and why I like Eggers, because like, you know, even though Eggers is kind of, I'm questioning his deal now, you know, it's still just like, here's something different with maybe not the highest budget behind it, but budget enough, and it's going to have good stuff across the board where like even if you hate the story, you hate the characters, you hate the subject matter, like it's going to have good music, it's going to have good cinematography, it's going to have like really incredible artwork and shit like that, and production behind it, like
And the atmosphere is going to be incredible.
right. And again, like I told you, that's the main reason I watch horror movies. It's not to see a bunch of gore. I know where Rotten.com is. I know where YNC is. I can go watch gore if I
Yeah,
want
I mean,
to.
those movies, they only serve one purpose, and that's just to watch a kill.
Right.
And like,
And sometimes I love that. I'm not gonna lie. Like sometimes it's all I want to do.
like slashers, they're not there for a story, they're not there for the acting. And that's why I always laugh at people who talk about, well, this slasher movie had like terrible acting and had like terrible like
Right.
cinematography, and I'm like, it's a slasher movie. You're
Right.
watching it to see people get murdered.
Right.
That's it.
And but I gotta say, like when slashers do have banging music, when they do have banging stories, like they're easily up top, man. Easily.
It's a plus. But you don't get that very often.
But it catapults the genre to new heights. Like I can find a slasher in 30 seconds and it might not be the worst thing, but it's not going to be great, with just a couple clicks on Shutter or Screenbox, whatever. But and it might have a couple cool kills, but when they put the time to put in like a cool character design, fucking cool music, like I didn't love Terrifier 2. I loved Terrifier 1. Terrifier 2 was just way too campy for me, but it was still really fucking
it was
good.
really good.
It's just not my cup, but like it was fucking hilarious more than anything. Like Terrifier, you would laugh, but you'd feel bad for laughing in the first one.
Oh
You're
my
like,
god. Yeah, with Terrifier
haha,
2.
this clown is funny. Like that's funny, but he's gonna murder and rape these women. I know it. And then like he does it in the worst way, and you're like, holy shit. And 2, you already knew what was coming, so they played to that, and good for them, because that movie did reasonably well. But like, when that was a new character. I mean, I know he was in compilations beforehand, but like it was a newer character a lot of people didn't know about. And they did a competent story. The music was fucking hilarious. Like it just made it stand out. And it's the same with like the slashers. There's so many like in a box that you could fit into that box, but it's the outliers I like. Like Maniac, and when they remade Maniac, both of those kill for different reasons.
Dude, Maniac is my favorite slasher of all time.
It's pretty fucking great, man. I revisit that one often. And like I've already told you, all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, you can give me the worst one and I'll still love it, because Robert Englund knows it's the worst one and he's laughing through the whole fucking thing.
Right. Like I was talking to you the other day at like Dream Child. That was like one of my favorite ones, because the story in it is so fucked up.
Yeah.
His mom being raped by like 31 maniacs, and that's how he comes to be or whatever. And the comic scene in that movie is fantastic. I love that scene.
Yeah. And like, so when I was growing up, when I was like finally allowed to like just take on horror movies head first was New Nightmare. And I didn't understand it because I know not a lot of people liked it. And then like my cousins were always telling me, like, we would always have the argument, like, who would win, Jason, Freddy, Leatherface, Myers. And I was always Freddy. Like, it's Freddy every time. What are you talking about? And then like not even knowing about the other ones at that point, but it was like I had just saw New Nightmare. Like there's no question about it. Freddy will ruin your life. And then like my teens hit and I started watching all the other Nightmare on Elm Streets, and I was like, oh, Freddy's really funny. Like, oh, Freddy's really funny. Like, this is like a cartoon. Like, I get it now. Like, this is why people didn't like the New Nightmare, because it was super fucking serious.
Right.
Like 95% of the time. and that was always my dude. And then like lately, the Friday the 13th, like I've been watching the later ones that everybody bitched about, and I'm like, these all ruled for their own
It's
reasons.
pure fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like it's just
Like
pure fun.
there was this one documentary they did that just showed all the kills like back to back, and I was just like, this is the greatest movie ever. Like,
I
because it
think
was
like
every kill in sequential order, and I was just like, this is so awesome.
I think my favorite ones were 2 and 3. Like
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, 2 and 3. 3 definitely, because like you get those dumbass punker dudes. What's his face? I can't remember his name, but he's dressed up as a punker and he gets killed in the outhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I always liked always had a very soft spot for Jason Goes to Hell, because
That
was
movie's
around
great.
that was around the age where like I could finally rent them on my own, and my mom wouldn't like pre-screen them, or be
Right.
like, you can't see this. And it was just so good because it's just a ruse in the beginning, and they just lead him into a huge firing squad and kill him, and I'm like, that was the coolest thing ever. And then like the mortician is like, I should bite his heart, and I'm like, wait, why is he biting his heart? Do morticians do that? I was like 12 years old. And then like he just turns into Jason, and I'm like, this is dope. And then of course, Jason Goes to Manhattan was like, that was the first time I saw him as a little kid, like, or unmasked, when the water like blows his face
Oh,
off.
right, yeah.
I was like, what the hell is going on? And then I started to watch them sequentially, and I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But yeah, and my mom was always into Michael Myers real hard. And I think that's a big female thing, is like, there's some dude in the shadows always fucking watching me. Like, especially with the first Halloween, is like, because all he does in that movie is fucking watch her like the whole time. So I get why my mom got freaked out about that movie when she was growing up. And anytime it was on, she would watch it. It could be H2O, dude. It could be, no matter how bad of a Halloween it was. My mom was just glued to the TV growing up. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, watching Michael Myers. Shh. Like, it didn't matter. It could be the one Busta Rhymes. She was like in it. And I'm like, okay, you have fun doing that. And I remember I watched one with her once, and he just got like shot so many times and fell off so many houses and just kept getting up. And I was like, all right, Mom, I'm gonna go outside and play, like, have fun. Like, and I don't know, man. I just hope horror just keeps getting weird. And I don't mean weird as in like, I don't understand this, what's happening. Just like, you're not out of ideas. And like people like Aster and Eggers, they prove this shit. Now Eggers is doing a remake.
Yeah, and I hope it works.
It'll be good.
It'll be good, I think. And I have
The Lighthouse did not blow me away, and everybody says that The Lighthouse is amazing. I hear more words about The Lighthouse than I do The Witch, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
The Witch is a fantastic movie.
The Witch is one of my favorites. It's up there with Hereditary, but Lighthouse did not do it for me.
I think The Lighthouse, gets a lot of word because, you have Pattinson and you have Defoe.
Yeah, the casting and scripting was perfect. I will say that.
And I think that's really banter, why a lot of people talk about it, is because the casting was fantastic and the script was amazing.
The banter killed through the whole movie. It was so good. And it's a great movie, but it's not one of my favorites. Like, just I don't want to peg him as this, but just throwing in the Eldritch God at the end, I was like, stop doing the shit. I'm tired of Lovecraft adaptations, because they're not a Lovecraft adaptations. And then you're like, but guess what? Tentacles. It's like you're turning everything into like Japanese tentacle porn out of nowhere.
Right.
Like, stop doing that. And I hated The Color Out of Space with Nick Cage. If anybody wants that movie, I'll mail it to him. I don't want it in my house anymore.
Yeah,
because everybody in the world was like, I love this movie. It's a Lovecraft movie. Have you heard of H.P. Lovecraft? And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll watch the movie. And then I bought it blindly because all of my friends were like, dude, it's fucking great. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I watched it, and I was like, I've not been this bored by a movie in a long fucking time. So much so that I busted out the German Die Farbe, which is the same fucking story, but in black and white.
Right.
Well, not the same story. I don't want to get that wrong. It's based on the same story.
Right.
And it's fucking terrifying, depressing, and grueling the whole way through. and just smokes that movie. When I look at The Call Out of Space, I'm like, I get why Richard Stanley hasn't made a movie since The Island of Dr. Moreau, because he's a fucking wash, dude. He's a fucking wash. He might have got through with Hardware and Dust Devil, that's fine, but those were like unique things at that time. I mean, Terminator was out, but it wasn't big. Like, the dude's a wash.
Quite
And
honestly, Nicolas Cage in that movie was just absolutely, completely absurd. I don't think he was the right cast in that one.
I don't think anybody was, man. I didn't care about anybody in the movie. Llamas, like, it was way too colorful. It looked very, very fake. And I mean, that's the great thing about Die Farbs. It's all black and white except for the color, and you only see the color here and there.
Right.
Like, it's just like we're gonna make like a Depression era German movie, horror movie, and it's like, oh great, that sounds like the most terrifying thing ever. Like a German fucking Depression movie, great, awesome. I bet that's gonna be terrible, and it was. It was so fucking depressive, and then they just had like little flares of cosmic horror in there, like the fucking story does. But with that, it was just like, how many tentacles and weird goo can we fit in a movie? Let's find out. And it was just like, stop doing
Yeah,
this,
I
man.
think that's what people really need to stop doing is like leaning so much into the cosmic horror genre because they don't do it correctly.
Right. It's
And
never full on
it's not a genre that
100%.
can be done correctly because it's not something that can be fully understood.
Well, and it's not ever 100% on the nose like a lot of people try to do it.
Right.
It subtly creeps in to where you get to that point. I mean, look at Stuart Gordon's shit. Even when it was at its campiest, it was like, oh, it's just a mad scientist. Oh, it's just a mad scientist. And then it's like, that is a dismembered head trying to perform cunnilingus on a lady. Like, what the fuck? Dreams in the Witch House, it started with just a weird shaped room and going into geometry and all that stuff. Del Toro did pretty good work, but that wasn't all him. That was a bunch of other directors. So depending on the
Right.
story, depending on where I sit with it. But I mean, I spent all of high school wanting Lovecraftian horror in video games and movies, and now that it's here, I'm like, fucking scale it back, please, God, because I fear like the Mountains of Madness is gonna come out and it's gonna be just
Bad.
dog shit.
Yeah, it's going to be bad. Because at this point, with how people react to it, they're just, I just want to see the monster. Can I see the
Yeah,
monster, please? Like,
yeah,
no, that's not the point of it. And when I was having a discussion about this with somebody on one of the horror forums, they were talking about the movie Sphere. And I was like, well, the movie Sphere was a kind of a cosmic horror movie because it's one of those things where you didn't know exactly what was going on. They alluded to it,
right.
but they didn't exactly know what was going on. And I love that movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it,
It's
check it
been a
out.
while. It's been quite some time.
Dustin
I think,
Hoffman rules in that movie.
yeah, yeah. It's just kind of. I won't say horror is as dead as comedy because comedy's toast to me. I don't even think comedy movies exist anymore, man. Like, I
Oh,
really
that's a
don't.
tough one, dude.
Um, I even watched Quasi the other day, the new Broken Lizard movie.
They're still doing movies. I didn't even know that.
Oh, they never stopped. They did Tacoma Fire Department, the TV show, which is supposed to be pretty good, which can't be terrible because I haven't watched it yet, but take Super Troopers and make them firefighters.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So that one might actually be good.
That
But
might work out.
I watched all of Quasi. I did not stop it. And it had moments, but it was like, why did you guys do this? Like, I watched Heffernan on Are You Garbage? Which I watch everybody on Are You Garbage just because it's really telling. It's such a fascinating show. But you know, he they're working on Super Troopers 3. I think they just finished filming it. And he was like, but Quasi's coming out tomorrow night. So you guys check that out on Hulu. And it's like, it's their version of like a Monty Python story, but it's about Quasimodo.
uh,
It has its moments, but it's not Super Troopers good.
And it's like, what made you do this? Like, maybe you just had to get it out of your system, but like, some of it's just not funny. The casting is great because the people who you like line up in your head, like, I know who's going to play Quasimodo. It does, they do it completely different. But as far as the Broken Lizard people, but like, it's just really hit or miss on the jokes. But when they land, they're fucking funny as fuck. But it's just like I don't get why you guys like didn't halfway through be like, maybe we shouldn't make this or not. I don't know. But that was the
Yeah.
last comedy I tried to watch, and I don't know if it's just my disposition and dealing with depression, the past few years or whatever. But like, it's been very rare something has worked it out of me. South Park will always work a good hearty laugh out of me, regardless.
I
And
haven't
Matt,
watched South Park in so many years.
dude, it still hits
I don't know
constantly.
why. It's just I don't know if
But
it's
that's
like
good
between
because if you ever go back to it, you'll have like 10 seasons, and at least 8 of the 10 episodes are going to be hilarious.
right, and it's just I don't know if it's between like not having cable or just like being
So they
completely ignorant that it's even still going or what. But man, yeah, I haven't
so
watched it in
I
so
think a
long.
lot of us dropped off after Kenny died. And they tried to replace him. I think that's when a lot of us like were like, this is kind of silly. And then they brought Kenny back, and it was like, why did you do that? Because now you just undid like 3 seasons. But Ari Shafir brought it up. He was like, they never age. Like they went up 1 grade 1 time.
Right.
And then I think they ended up killing the teacher or whatever, so Mr. Garrison replaced her anyway. So like I went back in when they started making fun of SJWs. Like, so they got PC Principal, and like from then on, dude, it's been fucking hysterical. Like they just like get into huge fights about microaggressions and shit like that, and they just like they make fun of everybody we can't stand all day long, and it's like this is the greatest shit ever. And like Randy Marsh is now a main character. Like he runs a fucking weed farm, and almost every season has a whole episode about him just like hanging out with Tally and growing weed and acting like it's the American way and all this shit, but he's really like too high to function. And it's still fucking kills. South Park will always get it out of me, and then like Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast last night episode was fucking hysterical. Um, I can't really mention what they went into here, but it was pretty good. Um, and I mean, other than that, like I stay away from comedy, but honestly, I would give up like watching any comedy if I could just have like dependable horror, which
Right.
like since Hereditary, The Witch, and Midsommar, and I'll include The Lighthouse in there. Like we get 1 or 2 every couple years, man, that I feel like are mind blowing.
And what
Now
a
we get very good ones often, but like I feel those are fucking mind blowing. And I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with me, and they find them boring, and that's
oh
fine. But
yeah. And I
I'm in the
think
ride for atmosphere. I'm in the ride for the music. Like, you could have anything happen in your fucking horror movie as long as you have the hair standing up on the back of my neck while I'm watching it, and you don't have me with my phone out, and you don't have me like worried about what's going on in the other room, and like you just have my attention with. If you get my attention with music and atmosphere, you could be complaining that you're not getting as many blowjobs as you think you deserve in a horror movie, and I'd be like, this is so fucking crazy. Like, I'm just a sucker for that stuff.
right.
And then when out of nowhere, like gratuitous violence happens, like you've sealed the deal for me. And the thing with Ari is like whenever it ends with a huge crescendo, like in Hereditary, with all the horns, and like that moment he falls out of the window in Hereditary, all the way to the credits. Like when I saw that, I was in my house and I stood up and fucking clapped. And my
Right.
roommate was just looking at me, and she was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "This is the greatest movie I've ever seen." And she was like, "I don't even know what happened." And I was like, "I'm like 70% sure what just happened, but it doesn't matter because the music and everything just came together so fucking hard in that last scene. It doesn't matter if I don't know what happened."
And what really makes that movie so great is like the head, like, and that's what's great about Ari is like the endings. Like the endings make his film so fucking good. And
The
because like
endings
with
as well as the dream sequences, which
right.
we can get into in a minute. But go ahead with your ending.
But like with the ending to that movie, Hereditary, the last 30 minutes or so are just super fucking intense.
Right.
You know, with Peter, from the moment that Peter wakes up in his bed and you know he gets up and he's walking around in the house, and then he goes up into the attic and he sees the corpse of the grandmother, and then you know Annie, oh my god, banging her fucking head against
Right.
the fucking wall on the ceiling. I'm
And,
like,
like,
Jesus Christ. And she's cutting her throat with the piano wire.
you have like those moments too where you're like, okay, shit's popping off, shit's getting wild, and then you're like, okay, she's banging her head on the ceiling, and it like for 1 second you're just like, whatever, that's kind of corny maybe, but like the music is driving it home so hard. The atmosphere is driving it home so fucking hard. Like, yeah, if you're in a room with 15 people, they're all talking at a party when you're watching the movie, you're not going to be that captivated. But if you're by yourself or with one other person and you're just staring at the fucking screen, not doing anything else, it's going to grab you. And like, you know, the piano wire, like, it looks goofy as shit. Kind of like when they're setting up the corpses when I pointed out the other day, like, it looks goofy as shit, but it's still there. It's still
No,
taking effect.
like when
I mean,
you're in a room
Peter,
and it's dark and you're
right,
watching that scene,
right.
it hits you.
Peter could even be hallucinating that at that point. That could
Right.
be Paimon fully taking hold of his brain and manifesting. And he could not even be fucking experiencing that. You just don't fucking know. So I think that's cool that it looks just goofy enough to where you're like, I don't even know about this. Like you're unsure.
But another thing that kind of burned into my mind during that ending scene, like the whole sequence, is when he's in the kitchen and he sees the naked dude. Like he almost looks like a fucking silhouette.
Yeah.
Like it's so dark, but you see his teeth, and it's like that is just such a fantastic shot. Like
Yeah, I think I'm gonna watch that after this.
it's such a good shot, dude. Like, and it's almost reminiscent of the shot of the grandmother in that scene in my last video, but it's darker and more menacing, and it's so good. I
Right.
just
And if
love that sequence.
like that's also a movie where like frame per frame, like Midsummer is, you know, very much about constantly being reminded that they are like in nirvana, that they are just like in one of the most beautiful places on earth. It's sunshine almost all day. Like, and that's what I think he really wants you to keep in mind. Like you've got a torrential couple just having these ridiculous arguments and trying to make it work at the same time and trying to like make things up to each other, etc. Like with the birthday deal in the middle of paradise. Like they can't just
Right.
shove their shit aside. I mean, Danny's shit is a little more heavy, but they just can't shove it aside and rock with it. They probably could have if they weren't taking so many drugs, but you know, they just can't roll with it and enjoy it um, until they get separated, until he gets drugged, until she starts to fall in with all the other females and cook and shit like that. Like that's when they kind of start to enjoy themselves. He's on cloud 9, so I'm not even sure if he's enjoying himself. But she's actually smiling when she's baking with him before she's taken any drugs that
Right.
day that we see. Um and you know, with Hereditary, it's just like there's something in almost every scene that is reinforcing the notion of, you know, the main theory of the movie if you've seen it, like, and you want to understand what the fuck it was about, and you don't want to be like, I didn't understand it, so I'm writing it off as stupid. You know, if you want to look into that and just if you even just pick up on a single kernel, if you even just fucking read my shirt and you're like, I'm gonna Google that shirt and understand that, like, all you have to read is like what Paimon is about, and in the book he was written in, and it's all in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the horns are all there for a reason. And that's why like when there's certain musical cues, when you look in the background and you see bullshit, when you look at the mail and you see bullshit, and you see the sigil everywhere in that fucking movie. It's like, oh, this was all planned. Oh, I think I got the movie figured out. And then you watch it a third time and you're like, all right, I'm going to see how planned it was. And you're seeing stuff from like baby pictures on the walls. Oh, with the bottle of milk. I don't know if you noticed that one.
No.
So I can't remember what herb it is.
Oh no, yeah, I know what you're talking about. The
The
herb,
black.
the black herb that
Yeah.
Annie has.
Right. So that is in the bottle of milk that they are feeding Charlie when Charlie's born in one of the pictures.
Oh no
Like,
shit.
like you just see milk in the bottle and you see like this black shit in it. So that was them trying to spread Paimon's influence onto her body from birth. Because even though she wasn't a male, they were hoping that Paimon would take, which Paimon does, until the top half falls off. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean it's all through there. And
Damn.
that's what I appreciate the most out of any director. I don't care if it's horror or not. Like if you have backed up the story you're telling that fucking much, that's all I care about. Like apparently Aster's next deal is going to be a Western,
A Western, yeah. And it's gonna have Joaquin in it again, I think.
which kills me because I'm not a huge fan of Westerns, but that's because I haven't seen enough. Usually every Western I see, I'm like, all right, that was pretty tight. But there's just so many, I haven't really seen a lot of them. And I've been working my way into watching some Westerns recently. There's one with Klaus Kinski that I really want to watch because it's supposed to it's like, oh, Klaus Kinski's in a Western, and it's like, well, looking back, it's kind of a horror Western because Klaus is in it, and I'm like, okay, now I have to watch it, because it's him, and he looks like a fucking gremlin anyways, and he was a terrible
Right.
human being. So, and he apparently, I think he plays the bad guy, so it's probably fucking crazy. I even checked to see if it was directed by Herzog, but it's not. I was like, if this fucker's directed by Herzog, it's golden, but it's not. But yeah, I was looking at screenshots from it, and it looks fucking terrifying. At least a couple of screenshots I've seen look terrifying. But yeah, apparently he had Midsommar in his back pocket, and Hereditary, and View, and the Western, all in his back pocket. Or maybe there was one of those that weren't in his back pocket, and he jumped first.
Right.
But he's had a couple of them in his back pocket, and so they've just been sitting there for years, already written. And he said he just tweaked a few things before filming them and changed casting around to kind of, update them and try to find people. And this Western is one of the ones that was sitting in his back pocket, so I don't know what to expect, but I think it's best not to expect anything.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I really want to thank you so much for joining me today and talking about this movie. It's been fantastic. We've almost done a little bit over an hour and a half of talking, and I'm running out of space.
It's all good, man.
But thank you so much, dude, for joining me on the Darkest Fears podcast today. I will definitely have you back on. We'll figure something out. We'll watch another movie.
Yeah, anytime we can do some poopy movies. We can do something neither of us have seen. I don't care. Just let me know, man.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. And thank you so much again for joining me. You have a good one, dude.
Have a good night. Peace, everybody.